first of all, I would love to say big thanks to Bianca for giving us this time for joining us, for accepting the invitation to do our next live talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and share what I can and support new mamas on their Montessori journeys.
Perfect. Bianca, I will say a few words about you and maybe then you can say something as well. You are a Montessori infant guide and consultant. I think everyone knows you from hosting the Montessori Babies podcast, but you also have a Montessori Babies course. You have 15 years of experience both at home and school settings. You have your AMI training 0 to 3. You have a bachelor's in child development and master's in Montessori education. You are a Montessori mom yourself, so you have the teacher experience and the mom experience as well. What did I forget? What should I add? Or do you want to add something?
You covered all the big points for sure. I spent the majority of my field experience as a Montessori Nido teacher. So I've worked with hundreds of babies and their families, and I started venturing into the home settings. I actually started that because one of my students had to withdraw for health reasons, and I'd worked super hard with her family on implementing Montessori just in a day flow kind of way. But when they had to withdraw, I offered to go in home with them. And they weren't necessarily Montessori aligned or anything like that initially, but what I saw after and what they were able to feel just by incorporating some of the principles in their home, it was just a beautiful transition. So that's how I got into supporting parents in the home. I started the blog and then the podcast. Now I'm teaching the course, and it's been a really fun venture.
Wow, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
nice. Bianca, you have a presentation that you wanted to share.
Yes.
So just so everyone knows more or less the time that we will spend together, we will have around 30 minutes of the presentation that Bianca prepared, and then we will have another 30 minutes of Q&A, and we will either take questions here from Zoom, so you have some advantage of being here live with us. And if there are no questions here on Zoom in the chat, we will also take questions from the registration forms when you were registering for this live talk. And so we will keep it under 60 minutes. Perfect. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. First, thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited to connect with you all. Let me figure out how to share my screen. All right. We are going to be talking about, as you guys know, supporting baby development through Montessori during their wake windows. This is obviously a topic that is near and dear to my heart. All of my experience and education is in this, and I am a fellow mama. I'm currently doing this as well. My son is now 2.5, but this is him when he was a baby. Within the context of supporting your baby's development through Montessori, we're going to be going over some main points that I hope you can keep as tools in your pocket to think about while your child is awake and while they're sleeping, so you can prep a little bit. So we're going to be going over how babies learn, so addressing the developmental side of it, how to prepare yourself as a new Montessori parent, and that overarching Montessori principle topic is called the prepared adult, but we're going to be supporting new parenthood in that way, supporting language development, supporting development of concentration, arranging your home to support you and baby, and also laying foundations of independence and inclusion. So we went over who I am. I had this in here, but like I said, have loved supporting new parents in their journeys. I've seen so many new parents find their confidence and their flow when they start to infuse a lot of these principles in their home. And so my hope is that you can take these tools and find the same. So some of the things that I've seen when using some of the tips that we're going to be talking about today, they can help you find small, simple joys in your day, help let go of anxieties and expectations and slow, like we just spoke about, bring confidence and empowerment to your parenting, and then of course, set your baby up as an empowered, self-driven, lifelong learner. So there's really benefits to you and baby, and then everyone who's experiencing your environment at home. And you'll see why in just a bit. So like I said, my goal is that you leave feeling confident in using the tools that we talk about. So those of you who know me, from my podcast, I love quotes. I love finding inspiration from quotes. So you will see them sprinkled throughout the presentation. So Dr. Montessori said, "It follows that at the beginning of his life, the individual can accomplish wonders without effort and quite unconsciously." And it perfectly segues into our first point, which is how babies learn. So, diving into what is going on in their brain. So, our babies are seeing the most rapid rate of development that they will see in their lifetime. They are forming up to 1 million synapses per second. And then these connections are the building blocks of learning, and every interaction strengthens these neural pathways. So basically, they're on a constant learning mission and they're taking in everything around them. And Dr. Montessori described this absorption as the absorbent mind. As I'm sure you guys have heard, that is one of her most famous works. And it really talks about just the miracle that is the infant and young child brain during these early years, and that they really are just absorbing it. It is forming who they are, right? So babies and toddlers, what you will also see is that they have a natural drive to learn about their world. They're driven to not only explore their space, but they observe us and absorb what they see us do. So this natural drive is something that I'm sure you guys have either consciously noticed or unconsciously noticed. It is when you, for example, hold a rattle in front of your young baby's face and you see them super stimulated and they'll try to reach for it, or a crawling baby who crawls over to the cabinets and shakes them up. All of this is that natural drive to learn about their world. So I like to put it in the context of their little scientists figuring out their environment, exploring, and just building their brain within this. So as you can imagine, sensory rich environments help the brain form these neural connections. And that combined with movement and exploration is just going to really support the early learning process. One phrase that I like to keep at the forefront of my brain, especially when my son was super tiny, is that they're learning about who they are to the world and who the world is to them. And that initially starts with just you. All they really need is you at the beginning, their relationship to you, that then translates into their exploration in the environment and later on with relations in society and stuff like that. So with what we just spoke about, just keeping in mind that literally every moment, big or small, however tiny you may think it is, shaping the mind of this sweet child. So they're consistently learning. And you will also soon find out that even though this may sound a little bit daunting, having just a few of these tools in your pocket is really going to help you enhance these earliest moments. So, one of my favorite activities to shift our perspective is what we're going to be doing right now. So, I would love if you guys would drop in the chat the first adjective that pops into your head when you think of your baby or a baby, if you're a guide or a caregiver. Curious. So good. Second, curious smiles. Yes. So, all of these energetic. Exactly. Most people start to think happy and interested, adorable, cute, squishy, giggly, delicious, and the new baby smell, soft, funny, maybe loud, demanding. I know when I initially practiced this activity on my husband, he said stinky and silly. All of these are really wonderful adjectives and right and true, right? That describe our babies. But in the context of being a new Montessori parent, some of the things that I want you to keep at the forefront of your mind are adjectives like capable, respectable, powerful, driven, limitless, observer, constant learner, and hard worker. And because they are on this constant mission of learning about who they are to the world and who the world is to them, having these at the forefront of our brain really help us reframe certain situations and see the learning opportunities and lead with respect and capability, which is very important when you're implementing Montessori with your baby. So the second point that I want to talk about is preparing yourself for these moments. So Dr. Montessori said children must grow not only in the body, but in the spirit. And the mother longs to follow the mysterious spiritual journey of the beloved one, who tomorrow will be the intelligent divine creation, man. I just thought this was the most perfect way to jump into the prepared adult and being a prepared parent, because the Montessori approach is truly for both you and baby. When I think of the transformative experience that it can be, I initially think of when I took my Montessori training. Even before I took my training, I worked in a Montessori school, and everyone who had completed their training came out the other side feeling like they were transformed. And I was just, what does that even mean? But truly, when you start to implement the principles and lead with some of the adjectives that we just spoke about and stuff like that, you will really find that you're approaching your baby in a truly just transformed way. And then I also just want to note that being a prepared adult, being a prepared parent, mama, it can greatly influence how your baby experiences their world, right? Because initially, really, they just need you. And so you having these tools in your pocket is going to just make the experiences glide, right? And then, of course, it can also enhance your own experiences as a parent, because, like I had mentioned earlier, finding confidence and flow and all of these things can be really helpful in early experiences. So, what this means in being a prepared adult, so it means approaching their development with purpose, intention, and support, and understanding that from our language and interactions to the toys and materials we offer, to how we structure their environment, to even how we move within the space. All of that is being absorbed by our babies, right? And like I said, it may sound a little bit daunting, but again, just having all of this information, keeping it at the forefront of your brain and doing your very best is just wonderful, right? That's what's best for your babies. A big pro tip as far as being a prepared adult is to consciously slow down. I want to note that I know early parenthood, early motherhood, you're sleepy, you're juggling a lot, probably maybe balancing other children, housework. There's a lot of things that happen. But being conscious about being slow in certain moments is going to be really beneficial to both you and baby, right? So for baby, because we're consciously slowing down, you'll find moments of concentration and interaction pop up. And then for you too, it's also good for us and our nervous system to consciously slow down as well. So it benefits for everyone. And then another point for the prepared adult, another pro tip is to find small moments for self-care. I also know in the beginning, these are really hard to find. And meeting even your own basic needs might feel hard sometimes. Small things. Like I remember when my son was very little, I had to consciously tell myself to get outside and walk because the fresh air was good for the both of us. Or there were moments where listening to certain songs were helpful, stuff like that. Having little tools in your pocket that put even a little bit of juice in your cup will be really helpful in moments where you're needed to slow down and connect and stuff like that. And then also, if you're able to almost in a meditative kind of way, think of a happy place when baby is upset or something like that, that can help you feel regulated, which will then help regulate baby too. And then I just also wanted to know that there's countless research about responsive caregiving and how it supports the earliest years of development. So the third point is supporting language. So during our baby's wake windows, one free and very wonderful gift that we can give them is language. So Dr. Montessori said, to talk is in the nature of man. The child does not learn because he is taught, but because he has the power to learn. As you can see, there are so many benefits to supporting the development of language. Language quite literally is a building block of their brain, and our babies are in their sensitive period for language. So Dr. Montessori described this very specific period where our babies can take in language effortlessly from 0 to 6. And then also in relation to what we just learned about with our baby's brain development, giving them as much language as possible is just so wonderful during this time. So It also supports vocabulary growth. So even when our babies aren't talking yet, they're taking it all in, right? So we're giving them these words, they're building new brain connections. And then when they do start to talk later on, you'll see so many of these words pop out, right? They learn social interactions. It supports their executive function development, cognitive flexibility, symbolic thinking, right? Because you're pairing words to objects, which is early mathematical mind as well. So many benefits to offering language to your kids. And then I do also just want to note that every child develops at their own rate. Of course, there are general milestones and such, but there are physical and there are developmental reasons why kids develop at different rates. And so just doing your very best with the tools that we have today, working close with your pediatrician, and just knowing that your child is on their own very beautiful path. What are some ways we can support language during wake windows? So one thing that I highly recommend is sportscasting. Sportscasting is essentially where you're narrating everything that you're doing. And this is something that is easier to do during the whole infancy toddlerhood period. But when your baby's a newborn, that's something that you can just think about and just start practicing. It might feel a little bit silly at first. I know for me, when I first got into working with babies, it felt a little bit silly, but after a few days, it'll just become like what you do. And the language is incredible for them. And they're constantly just taking it all in and then relating what's happening to experiences and things like we just mentioned. Serve and return moments of conversation are so, so good for their development. The back and forth that happens with serve and return, there's actually recent studies that came out that support that these are even better than just standard talking to baby, because there's so much happening in the back and forth interaction, right? They're learning the social piece to it. You're usually there, connected, slowed down, and present. So there's a lot that can be supported with these serve and return moments. So I highly recommend taking even just a minute or two whenever you think about it and offering this moment for your baby. Of course, read every day. This is so good for them. Reading anything and everything too. I know when my son was little, I like to read poems and things that I would also read, of course, children's books. There's so many beautiful ones out there, but you can read what you want. Singing and rhyming. Singing you can also do throughout the day, not just necessarily. You can do a more formal circle time songs, which I also recommend, but you can sing as you're taking your child to change their diaper, like when you're picking up your baby. And this is something that I did a lot with my son and did a lot in the classroom, where I would say, you're going to change your diaper, just stuff like that. Be silly, that the positive energy and the music is all just really good for their language development. Directed choices are also amazing. So when your baby can consciously reach, offering them choices between things will help label certain things and get them involved in that way. And then music and movement. So that's music, dancing, rhythm, all of that is amazing for their language development. So supporting the development of concentration during their wake windows. Interestingly enough, a lot of these different points will support their development of concentration, and I'll tell you why in just a bit. So Dr. Montessori said the child who concentrates is immensely happy. And that is a picture of my son with our open close material when he was a baby. So focusing on the development of concentration happens within environment setup, which we're going to be talking about next. For example, having a big cluttered space with a lot of things around. If you think about how baby's brain is working, if they're taking everything in, it can be really hard to focus on this one toy that you put in front of them when there's a lot of other things around. So having a tidier, kind of simple environment will help them in that way. And then also the toys that we offer too, right? So if you think of a big light up toy that has a lot of different activities on it versus a toy or material that maybe isolates or skill, or what I like to say is where they're using their brain as the battery, these will encourage elongated moments of concentration. The way you move and interact is so big. That's what I talked about in the prepared adult side of it. moving slowly, being conscious that they're always watching you. And then, like I said, the way that you interact too, having those back and forth moments, waiting for them to lose interest. So, waiting for their moment of concentration to be done segues into the last point, which is do not, whenever you can, as often as possible, because I know in the home, again, you're juggling so much, but try not to interrupt a focused moment as often as possible, because those moments are just so essential for their development of concentration. So you might notice that at 6 months, when they start to sit and they're using a material that you offered them, they are using it for 30 seconds. But then you watch them as they grow. And if you don't necessarily interrupt these moments and you keep watching, what they're interested in, these moments will start to elongate. And that's the idea on development of